Hello and welcome to my Monaco Grand Prix driver rankings video, the series in which you guys can get involved. Following the link in the description down below, you can rank the drivers from today's race from 20 being the best score possible down to 1 being the worst score possible, with the aim of comparing my results today and your results to also my data algorithm that will be released on Tuesday. So you have a couple of days to fill in that form down in the description below. We'll also be going over the results of the Predictions Championship as well, and actually it did take me a little while to go through. There is 50 individual entries for today's race, bumping up the total number of entries across the whole season to 84 overall. And I don't have an automated way of doing it just yet, as each name is subtly different for each Grand Prix, so there's no real way I can fully automate it. I have to go through each one manually, so it's taking a little bit of time. I will try my best to come up with an automated way to solve it. But with that, we will now jump on in to the driver rankings for Monaco, and we just take a brief look at the championships. It is Max Verstappen, 4 points now, leading Lewis Hamilton. For the very first time in his career, he becomes the 64th different driver to lead a championship. Norris is still P3 ahead of Bottas, who failed to finish due to a very strange retirement actually from Valtteri Bottas, the wheel nut refusing to come off. Then we've got Sergio Perez just 3 points behind Bottas as well, and then come the two Ferraris of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz. And taking a look now at the constructors, Red Bull lead it by just a point for the first time in the turbo hybrid era after Mercedes had a doozy race in Monaco, a Monaco Grand Prix to forget. McLaren are still P3, only just 2 points in it back to Ferrari. Then come the close battle between Aston Martin, AlphaTauri and Alpine. And then skipping into the prediction scores for the Monaco event as a whole, it is a first-time victory for Torst. I'm going to go with Torst for the moment. Their very first entry as well. I apologise for butchering any names. 16 points out of a possible 25. A massive spread all the way down to the 5 of Elian and Gemma Gibson as well. I slapped myself in the bottom half, unfortunately. I scored 7 along with Aaron from the 5 Red Lights channel as well. A lot of people in the double point scoring their bonus statements. Interestingly, no yellow flags, and that was someone's prediction. They predicted no yellow flags or no VSCs or no safety cars, and there was nothing. Wow, that's never happened. That's just never happened. I pointed out on Twitter on like lap 53 or something like that, have we even had a yellow flag? And there was none. It was a bit of a boring race, which means the overall total tally for the entire season so far looks a little bit like this. I'm going to have to come up with a much better way of presenting all of the information than this because there's far too many names to include. But it is still Evan Darcy at the front, still not having a bad weekend so far. 73 points. Is now Doctor Who channel in second place on 65. Aaron from the 5 Red Lights channel slips back a little bit into P3 with Joe Bisho so very close behind, and I slip a little bit down behind Arturo. Then we've got a couple other people like Alan as well on 52 points, matched with Mickey 380SX, and then my little battle with Hal Lowe on 51 points. What's that now? 5 points separating us. That's not a lot of points. A lot can change. And then also to the first-time entrants as well, I will be working on an average score across the whole season, so you don't have to worry about trying to climb up all the way to the tippity top if you have not entered every single season. I will be working on an average, but I just need to sort of work on a little better of a displaying scenario. But I've got 2 weeks to do that now until Azerbaijan. But with that all out of the way, we will now jump on into my driver rankings. We are taking into consideration qualifying and the race, just those 2 sessions, and I would like you to do the same if you do follow that link in the description down below. 20 is the best possible score that they could achieve, the best possible weekend they could have, and 1 is the worst. And I've had a few questions on the order that I go in. We are going in 2020 championship order for the constructors, so it will be the 2 Mercedes, the 2 Red Bulls, then the 2 McLarens, etc, all the way to the bottom. It's just the fairer way to do it. So with that, we will jump on into Lewis Hamilton. 5 out of 20. A weekend to forget. Absolutely nowhere in practice, absolutely nowhere in qualifying, and then in the race, absolutely nowhere. Again, stuck in traffic behind Pierre Gasly constantly, missed out with the undercut, it wasn't the best strategy to go for. They should have done the overcut, much like Sebastian Vettel and Sergio Perez, who were behind him, who ended up finishing ahead of him. A weekend to forget for Lewis Hamilton, not his finest. And then Valtteri Bottas. 14 out of 20. Honestly, a Grand Prix for him to be proud of. I know he retired due to an issue that is very bizarre and not at all his fault whatsoever. He could have stuck it easily on the front row. He thinks he could have challenged for pole. Maybe, possibly. I think it was Max Verstappen who would have got pole position, but definitely on the front row, much like it ended up being with Leclerc not starting the Grand Prix. But then in the race, he actually did have some decent pace. It was keeping it to Max Verstappen, slightly falling back to the end of the first stint, but then it just, the pit stop issue. Not his fault, which is why I haven't really taken it into much consideration at all, so 14 out of 20 for Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen, though, 19 out of 20. The only thing he didn't do to get 20 out of 20 was pole position. Yes, that wasn't really his fault whatsoever. He was on the pole position lap if Leclerc had not binned it into the wall. And then the race, you can't fault the guy. He led every single lap of the Grand Prix, bar a couple where Sergio Perez was in front during the pit stop phase. And he just had the pace on everybody. Not challenged, no mistakes, nothing. The perfect weekend. And speaking of his teammate, 17 out of 20. Yes, it was a little bit of a crappy qualifying being P9, but the strategy and his tyre preservation to go long, to do the super overcut past Sebastian Vettel's overcut, to go past Lewis Hamilton and Vettel as well, to stay P4, mega. Mega. That is a Sergio Perez strategy to a T. And yeah, 17 out of 20. Perhaps a little on the high side. You may want to kick it down to maybe a 15 or a 16. But I think 17 out of 20 is fair. Then we take a look at the McLarens, and Daniel Ricciardo, 8. Much like Lewis Hamilton, a very difficult weekend. Struggled in practice, knocked out in Q2 in qualifying, and the race, no pace whatsoever. Came away with no points either and was lapped by Norris as well. Yeah, that's it. 8 out of 20 for Daniel Ricciardo. Then we take a look at Lando Norris. 17 out of 20, equal with Sergio Perez. A very, very stellar qualifying. A very, very good race, taking full advantage of the fact Leclerc did not start, and he maintained his podium position all the way till the end. Came under a little bit of pressure from Sergio Perez right at the very end, but ultimately nothing came from that attack from the Red Bull. Even though Norris was complaining that the car was absolutely undrivable, he still managed to drive it to the end. So 17 out of 20 is Lando Norris's score. We then take a look at the Aston Martins. 16 out of 20 for Sebastian Vettel. A very, very, very good Grand Prix to go P5. P5. They had this strategy on point and they beat Lewis Hamilton. They managed to get the overcut on Lewis Hamilton and Pierre Gasly as well. A stellar, stellar drive from Sebastian Vettel. 16 out of 20. And as for his teammate, just because he finished a little bit lower, 14 out of 20. He did kind of leap the swimming pool chicane, I think on 2 occasions or something like that. But again, strategy on point. He went super late and ended up being P8. Someone did actually predict that both Aston Martins would score points, and they scored a bonus 5 points in the prediction contest. So 14 out of 20 is Lance Stroll's score. Then we take a look at the Alpines. Fernando Alonso, 8. I think this is being a bit generous, to be honest. A shocking practice, a very shocking qualifying out in Q1, and then the race, I literally saw nothing from Fernando Alonso whatsoever. Very, very disappointing, and I do feel like 8 is being generous. I might knock this down to a 6, but at the moment, 8 is good enough. His teammate, though, Esteban Ocon, 13 out of 20. A stellar Grand Prix. He drove it into the points. He did everything that he possibly could. A very, very good drive from Esteban Ocon. Then we take a look at the Ferrari pair, and Charles Leclerc, 10 out of 20. Yes, he did enough to put it on provisional pole, but would he have done enough to put it on full pole position after all of the runs were completed? I personally do not believe he would have done so. Yes, he was improving, but he was not improving anywhere near as quick as especially Max Verstappen or Valtteri Bottas. Even Carlos Sainz, for instance, Leclerc could have ended up P4 after those final runs, and ultimately he crashed on his own. That was entirely his fault, nothing to do with the car. And the race, he didn't start. It's a bit of a shame, a massive shame really. It kind of took away from what could have happened in the race completely, so 10 out of 20 is his score. But his teammate Carlos Sainz, 17 out of 20, take a bow. Carlos Sainz. I was about to start clapping very loud then, but realised I'm quite close to the microphone. Yeah, 17 out of 20. A very, very good Grand Prix for Carlos Sainz. I know he was a little bit disappointed come qualifying to miss out on the chance to move up a little bit from P4, but ultimately a very, very, very good qualifying session. And then equally in the race, he just drove it to perfection to go P2. He did start applying a small little bit of pressure to Max Verstappen in the closing phases of the Grand Prix, but ultimately Verstappen was just coasting to the very end. Then we take a look at Pierre Gasly, 15 out of 20, an exceptional qualifying and an exceptional race, holding off Lewis Hamilton in a Mercedes around Monte Carlo. You couldn't really ask for a better defense from Pierre Gasly, so 15 out of 20 is his score. However, Yuki Tsunoda, 4. An awkward practice, a very awkward qualifying, and then the race, he went so long, banking on a safety car that just never came. Hell, wasn't even a yellow flag that came to aid Yuki Tsunoda. 4 out of 20. He didn't really show any promise, any magic, anything. 4 out of 20. Then we take a look at the Alfa Romeo pairs, and it is Kimi Räikkönen up first. 11 out of 20, a very respectable qualifying and also a very respectable race. I know he didn't drive it into the points like his teammate did, but still a very solid race. And speaking of his teammate, he scores 13 out of 20. Getting into Q3 in an Alfa Romeo is mega. And then also driving that Alfa Romeo into the points, mega as well. So 13 out of 20 for Giovinazzi. Then we take a look at the Haas duo, and first up is Mick Schumacher, 8 out of 20. Now, to add a little bit of context to Mick Schumacher's race, he did have a power outage or a power-related issue, so that's why he ended up finishing a little bit behind Nikita Mazepin. I don't think it was a massive amount behind, but he did finish behind. I don't know whether the problem was rectified or anything like that, but he was definitely down on power for a portion of this Grand Prix. However, he crashed in practice and then didn't get to do any qualifying, and that's then severely hindered his Grand Prix. I mean, yes, he wouldn't have started much higher up than 19th or 18th originally, but still, that has come into account for my score of 8 out of 20. Nikita Mazepin, though, 9 out of 20. I think this is the highest score that I've given him so far this season. He didn't put a foot wrong at all in a Grand Prix in which everybody, myself included, thought he was going to at least put it in the wall once. He never did. Mick Schumacher, on the other hand, put it in the wall twice. Once in one of the practice sessions, and then once quite very heavily in practice 3. So yeah, even Alonso put it in the wall. Nikita Mazepin did not. So that's mainly the reason why I've given him 9 out of 20. Then we take a look at the Williams, and I'm very disappointed. 10 out of 20 for George Russell. Qualifying, yes, he got into Q2, which bumps his score up a touch, but the race, no pace whatsoever. I thought they were going to score points this race, and it just didn't come to fruition whatsoever. It's a massive, massive shame. And then finally, Nicholas Latifi, 9. Again, qualifying, his pace just isn't there. The race, he just wasn't there. He was always battling with the two Haas cars. 9 out of 20 for Nicholas Latifi. And there we go, there is my driver rankings for the Monaco Grand Prix, all done and dusted. Please let me know what you think of this race down in the comments below, and also what your rankings are. Make sure to use that link down in the description below to get them submitted. You've got a couple of hours left of this Grand Prix, or of this Grand Prix day, and then also Monday, and I'll be collating all of the results and averaging them out on Tuesday. But that is all I've got for you today, guys. I hope you have enjoyed, and I will catch you in the next episode with whatever and whenever I decide to make it. I'll see you guys then.